Who are we, you ask? We are the podcast seeking out a better understanding of all things paranormal. We'll have guests from all backgrounds in the paranormal with us along this journey, with Q&As for listeners to ask paranormal experts their questions, and open call-in nights to let listeners discuss their thoughts and experiences on the paranormal. But the question remains, can the unexplained be explained? Or can the paranormal be nothing more than perception? So, close the curtains and turn out the lights and join us on the journey into the paranormal. This is Paranormal Engaged with your host, Adam Young, coming to you from the beautiful Evergreen State.
And welcome back to Paranormal Engaged. We have another exciting episode for you here. We have Klaes from the Hinsdale House with us, and he's going to be taking some time to share with us about the history of the house and his experiences there. Dan, welcome, and thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. So, if you can, share with us a little bit about the history of the house.
Well, at this point, we have the house dated back to 1853 when it was built. And we also have researched the land and property till around 1701. The continuous effort to try to figure out what's making the property tick and the house tick as far as these unexplained activities happening at the location. It became famous back in like the 1970s, early 1970s when Dandy family moved in. They started having poltergeist-like activity. They were seeing strange occurrences happening on the outside of the house, strange things happening on the inside of the house, things that were unexplainable. One of their daughters was getting affected really bad by it. Friends were seeing it. People that were coming to the house were seeing it, and they ended up looking for help. And they found that in the Catholic Church, where a priest from St. Bonaventure University came along with a psychic by the name of Alex Tanis, who was very, very prominent back then. And they tried to assist this family with what was going on in the location. And this is all very taboo before the movie The Exorcist came out in the 70s. So really, it wasn't something that you heard about every day. Automatically you're dealing with demons because it was either angels or demons back then. And they came in, they did a mass at the house, and whatever was there kind of set back, but then started ramping back up again. And they ended up getting a structural exorcism approved from the Vatican. They came in and performed this exorcism in front of a film crew, and it didn't work. And the best advice they gave to the family was to leave, and that's what they ended up doing. They ended up basically fleeing. Everything they put into that house, they lost, and they moved to California, as far away as they could get from it, Mm-hmm. So that's basically what made it famous back in the 70s, and people lived there on and off through the 1980s, and then the place stayed vacant, and it was just a run down place. It had so many things wrong with it that they were going to tear it down, and I kind of stepped in, and we've been renovating now for 5 years and trying to fix up the property and bring new life into it to try to use it for research purposes to try and figure out what's going on, and finding the answers there.
So what experiences have you had there at the house?
Everything. I mean, not personal experiences. I've witnessed shadow figures. I just spent the night there last week, and I couldn't sleep because I was doing a private tour, and as soon as it was like around 3:34 in the morning, laid down on the couch to try to get a couple hours of sleep because I had to head back home in the morning. And immediately I felt something touch the back of my head, like brush my hair. And I looked over, and you could see it looked like an arm on the ceiling that would have been cast from the nightlight. Because the only light that was on was a nightlight that was plugged in. And I'm like, where is this shadow of this arm coming from? And there was a girl on the other couch, and I said, Kaylee, because I know she wasn't sleeping. And I look over there at that light. Tell me what you see. And she's like, oh my God. She started freaking out. So we're seeing these shadows going back and forth for almost a half hour. Like they're just checking us out, like just creepy. And we've caught them on film before. We've caught them. We have cameras running there. We've caught them on camera too, like going back and forth on the video, live streaming them through different networks and things like that.
Wow.
I also had an experience there back before I even purchased the house, which really drove me to want to buy it and save it. I started researching other people that have lived there after the Dandy family. And it was quite difficult because it was a land lease. So the property was a lease until you paid it off. You didn't get the deed or anything like that. So it was hard to find out who actually lived there. And I came across this older couple that lived there in the 1980s. They lived there until like 86. And then they were the last people to live there. But they had a couple of videos up on YouTube with people were filming and talking to them when they were around. And had passed away, both of them. And I thought, well, geez, if this was happening to them in the Dandy family in the 1970s, it had to have happened to other people. It had to happen to other people that had lived here. So I was in the kitchen. It was me, the co-founder of my group, Cameron, and the lady that kind of helped run the place. Her name was Michelle. And at this point, the house had no electricity, no running water. It was just a shell ready to be torn down. And we were basically there saying goodbye to the place because nobody was getting back with us about purchasing it. And they had ripped all the ductwork and electrical out of it. So, I mean, it was just basically ready to be bulldozed. And I was in the kitchen and we were filming and they were talking about the exorcism and nothing was really happening. And then I said, Flo, are you there? And that was the lady's name, Florence Bisnick. And I got like a jolt of energy on my arm, like something that I to this day, it just gives me tingles thinking about it. And I had goosebumps and my hair was sticking up straight. And I had a K2 meter in my hand and the K2 meter went all the way off to red, 500 milligrams. And she says, I said, if that's you, can you hold on to my hand? And all of a sudden I felt this energy and the K2 meter stayed lit in my hand. And I had this all on video, like I'm videotaping as we're doing this. And, I know like a lot of people have seen on shows when you use like a K2 meter to get that energy fluctuation, you think you might be speaking with an entity. I was feeling it. And I also asked her to hold my hand. I said, you hold my hand as we walk up the stairs. And the K2 meter stayed lit in my hand all the way up the stairs into the master bedroom. Like I felt like I was holding on to like my grandmother. That's what the kind of the feeling I was having.
Wow.
And that just really pushed me to want to get this location and continue to research it. It was like it was calling to me, like, don't let this place go. Don't give up on this place. There's mysteries that need to be figured out, and having it on the level isn't going to do anybody justice. So it's stuff like that really pushed me to want to get the location. I mean, there's tons of EVPs on the outside and the inside of the house. You name it. We have video, we have picture, we have all of it. Anything that you would expect to get in an investigation, paranormal wise or unexplainable wise, we've been able to obtain that there. Even things that we can't explain. Creatures on the outside of the house that we have no idea what they are. It's creepy.
So what was your very first encounter with the Hinsdale House?
My first encounter was just like, any paranormal team. We were looking for places to go experience, paranormal activity. And that was one of the locations that my co-founder had booked. I usually did most of the booking and whatnot. He booked this on his own and said, don't do any research. Don't look anything up. Just, I'll brief you when you get there. And, it was the middle of December and we drove up this mountain in the middle of nowhere. And there's this little white house sitting there and, got in there and I sat down in the living room and he had us watch the episode of A Haunting. It's called The Dark Forest and it's based on this family that lived there in the 70s. And I just remember looking at him after I watched it, and I'm like, are we in that house? You know, because it immediately gives you freak factors. You know, you immediately get that, like, and I was like, are you effing kidding me? You know, like, did you really, you brought us to a place that had a failed exorcism and didn't think about letting us know. You know, it took me a while to cool down and warm up to what we were doing, you know, because you have to be on your toes and you have to really understand what you possibly could be dealing with mentally before you go into a location. We ended up having a very productive night as far as interaction goes. Nothing negative happened, but it was like the entities or whatever was there knew how to manipulate our equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, anything that we put down or anything that we used, we would get some type of response from. And it was like, it was a wow factor for me because, you know, you're coming from a guy that would sit in a room for 2 hours and hopefully I get an EVP or hopefully I get something to happen to. This is happening, you know, continuously keeps happening, and this is not explainable. You know, like there's nothing that can explain why this is happening to me right now. And it was constant. It was like, find out more, ask better questions. You know, like you just kept saying in the back of your head, like, what are we on the right path? I wish there was in my mind, I was like, I wish there was a better way to communicate. I wish there was a better way that we could figure out a way to know if we're on the right path or we're going in the right direction, you know, and just continuously keep fighting that, you know.
Right.
Because you could really build a story, you know, as a paranormal investigator, if you're using a K2 meter to communicate or a recorder,
Mm-hmm.
you could paint the story how you want to do it, you know, like you could paint the story, but I want to know, you know, like I want to know, like, is the story going the right way? Like
Right.
I that's why I continuously want to keep going back and researching the place, and I want the story to be correct. I think that's why the location called out to me, is because it wants the story to be told correct. And I can tell you that since I've owned it, the story has changed immensely. You know, like from what I thought I knew to what I know today, it's changed. You know, and it's crazy. It's crazy the amount that it's changed, and some of the stories that are like, wow, how could I have even said that? You know, like,
Right.
but you know, you only go by what you know at the time. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and just keep evolving.
So you kind of mentioned just a little bit ago about your experience that pushed you to work harder on purchasing this house, but what was it that led you into your initial decision to purchase the house?
It was that experience that I had with flow, for sure. You know, it's when my eyes really opened that there's probably a lot more, or could be a lot more to this location than just what happened to this family in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that needed to be explored. And by knocking the location down, we wouldn't be able to do that.
Right.
So part of me, like all the signs were aligning, you know, like the next day, you know, I had posted a picture of the house on Facebook and look where I investigated, and I got a message from a lady by the name of Jackie, and she's like, oh, that was my grandma's old house. I'm like, what? She goes, yeah, my grandma lived there, and they were the last group family to live there. They were Joe and Flo Misnick. I'm like, you got to be kidding me! Like,
wow.
that pushed me to it. Like, what a type of synchronicity was that? You know, like I had a connection with Flo, and then her granddaughter reached out to me the next day,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like still friends with me to this day. She comes out to the house. She feels close to her grandmother there, you know, and she's more than welcome anytime. But and then other things fell into place too. Like I had just bought a new house,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for my family, and I didn't have much left to put down on this location. And everything just fell into place financially. My wife, you know, try, you know, for those that have wives, you know, and try explaining that you have a location that has black mold, 500,000 honeybees, no electricity, you know, like falling apart, basically shack that let's invest, you know, deposit all the rest of our savings onto this, you know. And she for some reason was cool with the whole process and had believed in what I was thinking. And you know, just like everything fell into place the way it was supposed to. There was a big chance, you know, like that could have fell down something could have happened, and my investment could have just washed down the stream,
Right. So, but the activity is not just centralized inside the house. You guys also have experiences just out on the property itself, correct?
Yeah. So there's a lot of folklore and there's a lot of stories associated with this house and the property. And I would say it's active, if not just as active, even more active on the outside of the house. And there's a lot of ties to Native American. There's a lot of ties to Wiccans that were there. There's a lot of ties to even I'm going to say it, but there's aliens. There's been alien spottings there. There's been cryptid spottings there. People, it's like an energy draw of some kind. Like this property itself, the location itself, and people have experienced all different things there. And there's different stories, different folklore. The folklore is what I'm looking at right now, because there's little stories that are told from time to time. There's always that little piece of truth coming from there, and then trying to figure out if what's true and what's not true with this folklore of the location. Something that I'm diving into.
Right. Actually, could you share some of that folklore with us?
Yeah. So there's a story of two men that lived in the house, and basically they would lure folks in from the Stagecoach Trail, using it as a resting stop. And then they would, because the place is so isolated, murder, rape, and steal their goods, and then store their bodies there, and then bury them out on the hill. After the winter thaw, it was freaky, because when I originally was doing the research on the house, I had it to 1893. And I had screwed up on some of the research, the names and things like that, and I was corrected by another researcher in Pennsylvania, and which opened the door to figure out that there were actually two brothers that lived there, the Everett brothers, that built the house in 1853. And I don't, researching these guys, they seem like model citizens. They were steel workers, and they, I don't want to pin them as murderers, but there's this story. And there was two brothers that lived in the house, and there wasn't until we fixed the research, and then all of a sudden we had these two brothers living at the property in 1853. Just coincidence, We're gonna be doing like some GPR. We're gonna be doing some things like that, just to see if there's any ground disturbances or anything out on the property that may give some light to that legend or that folklore that's been told for years. And we will see what happens. It's costly. It's very expensive. It's like $400 an hour.
Wow.
To run GPR on the property. So if you want it done right, I mean, it can get more expensive too. They have these new drone GPR units that you can bring out, and those are really expensive. But it's not a cliche thing for people to do for a living. So it's there's a limited market for it, and the price is high. So but that's one of the folklore stories, and then of course you have the story of the woman that was hung. This was told by the psychic in the 1970s at the hanging tree, at Hinsdale hanging tree, and she was hung for committing adultery, even though she was married, just didn't have a ring, and her husband was off fighting in the war, and when he came back, he was basically told that they never saw her. But there is truth to the hanging tree. Town of Hinsdale's history, where it used to be on the property, in the northeast corner of the property, and there's truth to the well, we don't know if there's any truth to the woman being hung. I don't know if we'll ever know that. They don't keep records back then of who they killed and who they didn't kill. So, but a lot of people have seen, dating back to the 70s, a woman around the pond, dancing around the pond, or a woman in white, and they associate that story with her. This woman that was killed or hung while she was pregnant. So stuff like that, it's,
Right.
you can definitely look into it to a certain point, but it's you'll never get all the answers, unfortunately.
Right. So, what are some of the artifacts you found inside and outside of the house?
We have found in the attic, when we had to basically redo the ceiling, we were able to find items that were original to the Dandy family. We found an old ashtray that, in Clara's book that she wrote, was a poltergeist item that actually levitated and flung against the wall that she wrote about in her book. So we have stuff like that. We have ties to some of the families that lived in the house throughout time. We have on the outside of the house, we have found cool things that tie to the town of Hinsdale. We have found arrowheads. We have found glass bottles that say Hinsdale, like different dairies on them. Really cool artifacts. We just uncovered part of the old barn that used to lay behind the house, and that was actually burned down. And now we have part of the foundation of the barn, which is really cool. So we know kind of how the barn was laid out back then.
That's cool.
We found some of the old bricks from the chimney in the attic as well, which Clara wrote about in her book, about those being thrown. So we have some pretty cool artifacts. When we were renovating the bathroom, we found stuff in the walls. These carved bullheads. There's 2 of them, which we later ended up figuring out that were actually neckerchief slides, like for Boy Scouts, which I was freaking out about them at first because they were like these black carved bullheads. I'm like, there was one on the floor and one on the wall, and I'm like, this has got to mean something. They were put there for a reason, and I was kind of freaking out about that we even moved them, like if they were put there for any type of protection reason or something like that. And I, in researching them, they were like from the 1950s. So this is from the McMahon O'Brien family that lived there, and some of the kids were probably Boy Scouts, and these were something they probably carved and painted, and somehow, I don't know how they found their way into the floorboards and into the wall, but they were there, We found a letter written from Beth Dandy to her friend in Buffalo in the wall.
Wow.
Just weird, like it made me want to rip down all the walls, but I know that's not feasible.
Right. So, when you go and you do these investigations here at the house, how do you approach your investigation?
Well, I mean, I stay grounded. You have to stay grounded, and you have to keep an open mind. I always say, don't go alone. When you're going into an investigation, just because if something does happen, you want somebody to be able to, with a sane mind, pull you out. Maybe stop what you're doing. But for me, it's always been a respectful thing, and knowledge. So gaining knowledge and earning respect of what's there, and the more time that you spend there, the more respect you get, and the more evidence you obtain. So that's kind of how I approach everything that I do, in a respect. That's with the living and the dead.
So, do you find that you kind of get a better response going in knowing the history of the place versus not?
Absolutely. Because think about it. If you were a spirit and somebody came in and they started saying all this falsehoods about you, or not knowing the situation, it would piss you off,
Right.
And if you have that knowledge, it can definitely help, I feel. And that's kind of like part of the whole thing that I kind of believe in is like trying to give that knowledge to the teams that are coming in and the folks that are coming in, as much information as possible. So I have that information all readily available for teams that come to investigate, and they can add to it. Like if they figure something out or get a name or something happens like that, we're able to add what they've captured and add that to the history of the location as well. You know what I mean? Right. So the knowledge is power.
Absolutely. Now, do you find that these experiences have also kind of added to the knowledge to your research as well?
Yeah. I mean, every experience that we have says something about the location. Maybe we don't figure it out at first, or maybe we haven't figured it out yet. But I feel like there's ties and there's reasons for everything happening. and we just have to try to figure out why and what it ties to.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, back in its history, and speaking of the failed exorcism, do you still feel that negative energy still kind of lurks around?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to call it demonic.
Right.
I feel like what they dealt with back in the 1970s was bad, and maybe it's not as negative to the extent that was happening to them back then, but there's definitely a bastard of an energy there. Doesn't come out all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but people have experienced it. I've experienced it. My friend Nick's experienced it. My friend Ed's experienced it, and it's there. And I've felt it there before. Like I felt the energy change. You can feel the heaviness come into the room when you're investigating, and it's maybe like you're using a spirit box and you're getting positive interaction. It turns to negative interaction.
Right.
And I don't like to engage that type of stuff. And that's basically my advice to teams that come in there,
Mm-hmm.
is if they start engaging or feeling that negative energy, is to just maybe stop what you're doing and walk away and not acknowledge it.
Okay. So
But
clearly
there definitely is something there.
Yes, absolutely. So clearly, safety is always paramount when you're doing an investigation, not only physically but spiritually. So, what are some of the things you do to help protect yourself?
Well, I think that comes with each individual person, like what their belief systems are and what they feel is going to help them,
Mm-hmm.
comfort them with when they're at the location. So if you're, Christian, you might want to bring like a cross or something that you feel protects you. If you feel like saging is going to protect you, I would do that. I would say whatever makes you feel safest with what you're doing, do it, because it gives you a positive notation, and it gives you a positive outlook on your investigation. That's what you need in order to have a successful investigation is positiveness. And so whatever it really takes, we try all different types of things there when we have groups there. People don't have to participate in things, but it just puts people in the right frame of mind when you're doing it.
Right.
Like personally, like I have a little amulet that's been blessed by like 3 priests.
Mm-hmm.
I keep in my pocket, and like I feel like I'm protected when I go there.
That's good.
But I also feel like the house put me there. I don't know. I say that a lot. The house is its own entity,
Right.
And a lot of people do that.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, like Greg and Dana Newkirk and the Haunt Me crew were there, and they kind of explored that whole end of it, because people always say the house is its own entity, like its own entity, and but I feel like I was put in this position for a reason. You know what I mean? Like I was put in a position to help with the research and understand the location, and it's a situation that perhaps it doesn't bother me because I'm bringing it what it wants. New people
Right.
to pry on, maybe, or new people to investigate, or I don't really know for sure. Like it's just they really, like, when the episode that they did with Haunt Me, Greg and Dana, they did an EVP session in the living room, and they said, "What do you want? We only want to speak to the house. The house. What do you want from us?" And it said, the EVP said, energy. Like it needs energy. It's looking for new energy. And it just kind of made me like have a whole different perspective on the location,
Right. Yeah, it almost seems like it kind of just drew you there, not only for the energy, but just to kind of tell its story.
Tell its story, and then I feed it. I feed, and I hate to say it, but I mean, me going out and promoting the location, like I'm doing right now with you, even could spark interest from somebody else to go there. And I'm going to Paracons talking about it, and I'm going all over the country, and there's new TV shows on it. It's just going to spark new life to the location, it's good and bad, I guess, think about it. But luckily nothing negative's ever happened to anybody, so only positive things have happened, and it seems like the more that we learn, the better it's getting.
Mm-hmm. So Dan,
That
what?
makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. So, what initially got you into the paranormal?
I grew up wondering. I grew up in a haunted location. Like nothing ever negative happened there. Scary things happened, but I was a kid.
Mhm.
And I, I'd come home and there'd be like crayon drawings on the ceiling of my house, and there'd be crayons sitting in the middle of the living room, and my family was out for dinner or something like that. And unless somebody's pulling a prank on us, things like that would happen all the time. My sister's stuffed animals would be moved around. I would hear like singing in the house. I distinctively remember like coming in the house. Like my parents went camping, and I wanted to stay home. I didn't want to go camping. I wanted to hang out with my friends. I was a cool 12-year-old at the time, and my parents let me stay with my friend who lived 2 doors down, and we were going to play with GI Joes. So I was going home to get my GI Joe guys. We opened the door and we heard like "Ring Around the Rosie" being sung coming from upstairs, and I'm like freaking out, like nobody's there. Like nobody's at my house. My family's gone, and remember running upstairs, and there was nothing there, nobody, and stuff like that happened, and it just, my parents always kind of just tried to protect us, and just made us think like it really wasn't happening, even though it was. And then now they'll say, yeah, this stuff happened, and this happened to me, and I saw a shadow person in the basement. And, I ended up buying that house from them. I never stopped wondering about the place. Like I felt like drawn to it. So I bought that when I had my son, and he started experiencing some of the same things I experienced when I was a kid. And I was able to do the research on the location now. So I started doing research and finding who lived there, and then ended up finding that there were 2 children that died of cystic fibrosis in the location on a microfilm at the library, going through old death listings and stuff like that. And once I was able to acknowledge them, and I also found an item that was in the attic. It was an old painting, a little boy and a little girl that we never knew was there, that we were trying to figure out what they were tied to. We were able to kind of lighten the situation. It seemed like they were able to move to the light, and I don't know. It's just it sparked my interest. It was like a lifelong Scooby-Doo episode for me, and then I started doing all like the touristy type stuff, going to Gettysburg. I just wanted more, and I still do, and I don't think I'll stop until I feel satisfied with what I'm doing. So.
So, with that being said, I just now noticed this, but you have affiliations with the location. You're currently helping out with the Paranormal Relief Project. You kind of donated some time for the Hinsdale House for this as well. But
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
also. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I think it's May 21st.
Yes,
Next year.
it is. And with another location being released this week, I've noticed that you have affiliations with the Wildwood Sanitarium.
Yeah, it's another project that we're working on. A friend of mine owns that. Her name's Lori Ann Wagatha, and Lori is another paranormal enthusiast. She would come around a lot with my team and investigate with my team when we were doing like public ghost hunts, and she ended up becoming a really good friend of mine. And she was at my birthday party, and she pulled me to the side with her husband and said that they were thinking about investing into this location. And I, of course, opened up my arms and said, like, if this is something you really want to do, it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do, to try to renovate a location. And I said, yours is going to be a lot more expensive than mine with all these peaks on the roof. Needed a new roof, and so it's a little bit larger of a location. But, it's been something that we've been working on in the history. And right now we're working on getting the roof replaced. It's about $25,000 to $30,000 roof replacement. But yeah, I mean, it's an amazing location. Dr. Henderson, and it's got history ties, tuberculosis hospital, and many deaths, electroshock therapy, all these weird things they were trying back then, as they did in a lot of these hospitals. So this is just a small small sanitarium, so this is a smaller, not like what you typically would see, with these big, huge, giant buildings. So it's unique in that way, that it's smaller. I think it was like 8 beds only. So.
Right on. So, what was your first location you had ever actually investigated?
The first location, which was actually, and we owe that to my co-founder of the group, when I started with forming the Greater West New York Paranormal Society, my co-founder Cameron always had bigger eyes, bigger, he saw something and he went for it. So we ended up getting to investigate by ourselves, this giant old fort with ties to the Civil and Revolutionary Wars. It was an active army base. There was a French castle built there. There's, just amazing old history. And it was the creepiest thing being there at night alone on the grounds. And we found like old bullet casings, and we found definitely had some energies there. We found, like, the first night we found in pictures, we found what we thought was kind of like the Holy Grail, because we had pictures of an entity in the French castle that we couldn't explain. And I was happy in one aspect, and on the other aspect, I was ready to quit paranormal altogether at one, because it was a clusterfunk. We didn't know what we were doing. We were it was our first investigation as a team, and here we are jumping into a location that probably would be featured on TV if they were allow it. Like, it's that amazing and that cool of a location to be in. And but some of the stuff we did right, and we just kept building and learning, and from there we kept going, and I haven't stopped since.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, knowing what
we even had,
go ahead.
As with chanting, we even had like a guy that could speak French that came with us, and in the castle, we got EVPs of Jesuit chanting going on. It's so cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you give yourself, knowing what you know today, versus when you very first started investigating the paranormal?
Well, it's all for me. It's all been learning, and I know that there's a lot of folks out there that get turned off to the paranormal. I would say try to come up with a plan, like understand why you're getting into what you're doing. Don't base it off like, oh, that sounds cool. Like, really understand what your goals are when you're getting involved in doing something like this, because a lot of people watch it on TV and then they get burned out really quick, and aren't accepted into the groups or the cliques or whatever you want to call them. But just have some respect and have some goals set out for yourself. And as you meet your goals, evolve those goals. If you want to continue to go on, keep going. It's all about learning and having respect for other people. So I guess that's probably what I tell myself. That's kind of what I live by now. So.
So, with your paranormal research and stuff like that, what were some of your first goals that you met doing it?
As far as the
paranormal
Hinsdale House
research
goes?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah. My number one goal was to get the roof fixed. And in order to continue to research the location, we had to make it safe for people. There was black mold all throughout the kitchen, and 500,000 honeybees in the wall that could potentially sting somebody. And, my goal was to try to get the roof fixed, and I didn't know how the heck I was going to do that, because I just spent every last cent I had on buying the location. And really cool. Like, I posted a thing on Facebook, and I'm like, I own the location now, and if anybody wants to help out, we're going to have a day up there, and come on out and cook some burgers and do some painting and patching and whatever we can do with donations, And I ended up having like 63 people show up.
Wow.
And within a month, we had that roof tore off and completely redone. A lot of the patchwork done. A lot of the things that needed to stabilize the location, and it was really awesome. It was really cool to see something like that happen in a world where people turn against each other. And just to have I guess if you want to call it para unity,
Right.
it was a good feeling. So I don't know. I think that there's always going to be people that think different ways. There's always going to be people that don't get along. But if you can have a respect for, even if you disagree with somebody, and just agree to disagree and move on, I think it would make everything a lot better.
Right. So, talking about the restoration of the house, what do you have left?
Well, right now, I'd say that the house itself is restored. I still have to do some fascia boards, some molding on the house, and I have to finish doing the windows on the bottom floor, put new windows in, and we're also putting new cages on the windows, and having those made so they're actually like protection for the windows, so like nobody's there, like they can't get vandalized or broken into.
Right.
So we have to have those too. But as far as the house goes itself, that is basically it. I don't want to change too much of the inside because it's set in its 1970s. It's old, it's cool, and it gives you that feeling that you're walking back in time when you go into the house. The only other things that the goals I want to accomplish on the property too is taking back the land. As far as I have 10 acres of the original 100, and most of it was all grown over. So it's a project in itself, just bringing back that property so you can walk on it and mowing it, keeping it up. Also, building a base camp and a museum on the property as well for people to utilize. As a paranormal researcher, when you're that small and you have a decent sized team, there's always that element of you want to be able to cut out that possibility of having false positives when you're doing an investigation.
Right.
So part of what I want to do is build a separate cabin on the property, wire it so people can see the cameras on the inside of the house, and utilize that for teams to hang out in when the other team members are in the house doing the investigation process. And then the museum would be next to that, where we'd be able to show all the artifacts that we found, and have the history available for people that are coming in.
Right.
I don't even mind allowing people to use the artifacts, in an investigation. I have a mass kit, from the Catholic priest in the display case, and I leave that unlocked because people utilize that and they can use that to possibly get better evidence when they're investigating. It's pretty cool, and it's a trust thing.
Right.
I mean, I do have cameras on it, but I also, have to trust the people that are allowing in there to research. And for the most part, I'd say 99% of the people that are in the paranormal field are respectful and care about history and
absolutely
wouldn't want to screw anything up like that. So,
what would you say is probably your most favorite aspect of researching the paranormal?
Well, I mean, for me, it's being able to, on multi levels, understand something. So, like, say I got an EVP of a name, and being able to research it on different levels and maybe possibly tie that name to the location. It's just coming up with a positive affirmation at the end, of being able to actually say that, hey, maybe I figured something out here. Maybe we're onto something new, or maybe we need to start looking this way. So it's just being able to open new doors in the research process is what really gets me going.
Right. So, Dan, where can people find out more about the Hinsdale House and yourself?
On my website, danielklaes.com. Daniel and Klaes is spelled Klaes as in Sam.com. And there'll be links for Wildwood Sanitarium. There'll be links for Hinsdale House. There'll be links for events that I go to and talk about the place. And even though there's not many of those this year anymore, but they will be up there. And on events that we do at the house as well, if anybody is interested in coming up and checking it out, we have the events there. Or if you're a team and you want to come and investigate yourself and help with the process, you can book a night you're there yourself to stay.
Okay. And do you have any upcoming events coming up here soon?
Well, the next event that I think is still happening is the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. That's July 24th, 25th, and 26th. And then I'm going to be doing in September MadCon at Madison Seminary. I originally was going to be at New Jersey Prayer Unity Expo, but that got bumped, and I was able to join on to the MadCon in September there. But that'll all, I think there's a Mid-Michigan Paracon still happening in November. And then, of course, we'll have events at the Hinsdale House that I'll be attending as well, if I'm able to, overnight ghost hunts with para expeditions and tours and stuff like that. So I try to be as proactive as I can with that.
Right.
They're all listed.
Yep. Now, you're also the host of Within These Walls. Can you share a little bit about what that is and how people can find it?
Yeah, so basically this is my four members from the Greater West New York Paranormal Society. Nick Groff and Elizabeth Saint had come to me one day and with their new streaming network, Biddy Space, had asked if I would be interested in putting some content on there as far as the show goes. And a lot of what they were doing was live to air, like interactive, really awesome shows. And my whole thought process was I wanted to give people a taste of what it actually felt like going into a location for an investigation. And even if I don't get evidence, people will understand that, this isn't 8 hours of videos cut into a 30-minute segment. This is what happens when you go into a location. But my whole thing was I wanted to go to locations that needed help being promoted, that needed help being renovated, and be able to tell little stories about the location and get people interested in going there to investigate themselves. And we would show and utilize different types of equipment and explain how it worked. And that would basically be our show live. It was cool because people, when we're doing it, can chat with us. So there's a chat room, and they can actually ask questions and be interactive with us while we're actually at the location. Kind of like doing a Facebook Live, I guess, but
right.
A little bit more, where we knew what we were, the locations that we were going into and setting it up. So that's Within These Walls. And then I signed on to do a show called The Ghost Finders, which is on Amazon Prime, and we're in the middle of filming season 10 with that right now, and doing another special project with them as well. So, and then it's it's just for fun. Just keep having fun with it. Whatever
Absolutely.
happens, and basically all I've been doing.
That's awesome. Dan, I want to thank you for taking your time today to come and share with us about the Hinsdale House and about yourself. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. So I'll get with you after the show here. Yet again, thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
So with the Paranormal Leaf Project, we have another venue being released as of June 26th. It's going to be the Wildwood Sanitarium, and the event will be on May 21st of 2021. This is going to be for first responders and healthcare workers and a guest to come and have a paranormal experience, and a way that the paranormal community can say thank you to them. So For those of you who are a first responder or a healthcare worker, thank you for your service during this time, and we solely do appreciate it. Thanks again, everybody, for coming on and listening to Paranormal Engaged today, and we will see you next time.
If you enjoyed our show tonight, head on over to Paranormal Engaged on Facebook and stay up to date on the latest news. And don't forget to click that like button. To find more about upcoming shows and guest information, stop by www.paranormalengaged.com. Paranormal Engaged can be found on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, and can be played on Alexa with a Podbean skill.